Apostle Joshua Selman finally reveals marriage to Sandra Chinelo Areh. Congrats! Imagine waiting, not for days, not for months, but for years, just to hear one sentence. Now imagine that sentence finally drops, and the entire room erupts in shock, joy, and disbelief. That's exactly what happened last Sunday, when Apostle Joshua Selman finally broke his silence. And what he revealed, no one saw coming this soon. Stay with me, because this story is deeper than just marriage. It's about timing, loyalty, and destiny. Years of silence that turned into public curiosity. At first, it was never a serious conversation. People admired him for his teachings, his discipline, and his influence. His focus was always spiritual growth. And most people respected that enough not to interfere in his personal life. But as time passed, silence slowly became something heavier than intended. Every year that went by without an answer made people more curious, not less. It started as a simple question, and then slowly turned into repeated discussions across social media, church conversations, and even casual talks among followers. People began to notice a pattern every time the topic appeared. It was ignored or redirected, and that silence, instead of reducing curiosity, amplified it. Because when a question is never answered, the human mind naturally begins to fill the gap with assumptions, theories, and speculation. That's exactly what happened here. Silence turned into a story of its own. The hidden meaning behind why people reacted so emotionally, what made this moment even more powerful, wasn't just what was said, but how people reacted when it was said. Because the reaction in that room wasn't ordinary excitement, it was something deeper, almost emotional. People didn't just clap because they were happy. Many clapped because something inside them had been released. For years, the question had been sitting quietly in people's minds without resolution. And when a question stays unanswered for too long, it doesn't just create curiosity, it builds emotional tension. So, when the confirmation finally came, it felt like a long-standing mental pressure had been lifted. That is why the atmosphere shifted so strongly in that moment. But there is another layer to it. People weren't only reacting to marriage, they were reacting to the idea of timing finally making sense. It created a feeling that everything had been unfolding for a reason, even if it wasn't visible at the time. And in situations like this, people don't just celebrate events. They reflect on their own unanswered questions, their own waiting seasons, and their own delayed answers in life. That is why the moment felt bigger than just news. It felt like a message without directly being one. Suspense deepens the hidden presence people noticed. But while people were focused on the question, there was something else that quietly stood in the background for years. A name that kept appearing subtly, not in loud announcements or public attention, but in moments of observation by those who paid close attention. Sandra Chinelo Areh. She wasn't introduced as a public figure in his story, yet her presence was never completely absent either. Over time, people began to notice Patton's support, consistency, and a kind of loyalty that didn't need public validation. But still, nothing was ever confirmed, and that uncertainty only made the curiosity grow stronger. People could not tell whether it was friendship, destiny, or something deeper unfolding silently behind the scenes. The moment when silence finally breaks in church atmosphere. Then came that Sunday, a service that began like any other. The atmosphere was normal, the worship was steady, and people came expecting the usual flow of teachings and spiritual depth. But suddenly, something shifted. The apostle paused in a way that immediately caught attention. It wasn't dramatic, but it was intentional, the kind of pause that makes an entire room feel like something important is about to be revealed. And then he began speaking differently, not avoiding the subject this time, but addressing life, relationships, and human expectations. People leaned in without realizing it, because something about his tone felt different. And in that moment, he finally acknowledged what everyone had been waiting years to hear, that he is preparing for marriage. The reaction was instant. The room broke into applause, not just out of excitement, but out of relief, as if a long-standing question had finally found its answer. Emotional depth, the woman behind the story. But what made this moment even more powerful was not just the announcement itself, but the story behind it. This wasn't about a sudden decision or a new relationship that appeared overnight. It was about someone who had been part of his journey long before recognition, fame, or global influence. Sandra Chinelo Areh was not introduced as a recent chapter, but as someone whose presence had quietly remained consistent through seasons most people never saw. While the world saw success, there were earlier years of struggle, growth, and uncertainty, and during those unseen years, loyalty mattered more than visibility. That is what made this moment feel different. It wasn't just about marriage. It was about time, endurance, and recognizing someone who never left when nothing was certain. Deep message, what he said changed the meaning of marriage, but instead of turning the moment into celebration alone, he shifted the conversation into something deeper. He explained that marriage, no matter how beautiful it is, was never designed to carry the weight of every emotional burden. He made it clear that if someone depends only on marriage to fix loneliness, pain, or emotional emptiness, they will eventually feel disappointed. Because according to him, there is levels of comfort that only purpose, personal growth, and a relationship with God can provide. A spouse is not meant to replace those things, and expecting them to do so create pressure that no human can sustain. That statement changed the tone of the entire message, because it removed the illusion that marriage is a solution to everything, and replaced it with a more grounded truth about human relationships, the deeper warning about relationships and life direction. Then, the message expanded beyond marriage into something much broader: human relationships in general. He described relationships as invisible forces that shape direction more than people realize. Some relationships elevate a person quietly, opening opportunities, strengthening mindset, and supporting growth without demand. Others, however, influence decisions in ways that slowly lead to decline without immediate awareness. To make this real, he referenced how people rarely fall alone in life. Using the prodigal son as an example, he showed that influence is often shared. The son didn't make destructive choices in isolation. There were voices, companions, and environments shaping his decisions. And when everything collapsed, those influences disappeared. That reality hits deeply because it reflects something universal. Not all relationships are visible risks, but many are directional forces that shape destiny silently over time. Climax: why this moment feels bigger than marriage itself. At the core, this moment was not just about a man announcing marriage. It became a reflection of patience, timing, and discernment in life decisions. In a world where everything is rushed relationships, success, identity, this story stands out because it shows restraint instead of pressure, clarity instead of confusion, and timing instead of impulse. That is why people are not just reacting to the announcement, they are reacting to what it represents. It challenges the idea that life must move fast to be meaningful, and instead suggests that some things only make sense when they happen at the right time. Now the question is not just about him anymore, it becomes personal. Are you making decisions based on pressure or patience? Are you building relationships based on emotion or purpose? Because sometimes the biggest life lessons don't come from books or sermons. They come from real moments like this. And now I want to know your thoughts. Do you think this was the right time for him, or should it have happened earlier?